meeting, 30th of November. Just to let you know, we will be making a note of it at the mention at the full council. Councillor John Richardson has passed away. She was a Conservative councillor here on the council during the 1980s. Giving away my age now, I did serve on the council with Joan at that time, along with Peter, and there were a few more of you at that time. And it was a good time. She was very good, and I feel sure we send our sympathy and respects to the family. I know the council will be represented at the funeral today by John Street, and we thank him for that. But we will do the proper recognition at the full council meeting later on next month. So, now moving to declarations of interest.
Sorry, just apologies, just to confirm there was fully quorate.
Thank you, Mike. So I'll go for, I don't believe there's any apologies for absence this evening. We've got a full house. Okay, so I've got the minutes of the 2nd of November. I'll move that they are okay. Can I have that mover, please? Councillor Wright, seconder for this one, please. Thank you. All those in favour? Good, thank you. As I said, the declarations of interest. There are no Part 2 items this evening, and there are no public questions under item 5. So we've got a change to the running order. We are taking item 13 first. Right, so item 13 is indeed the report of the Independent Remuneration Panel on members' allowances, and I'm going to ask Steve Barrow to come forward to talk to your recommendations. Steve.
Thank you. Just to run through some of the key headings, key findings of the report. So we looked at the full scheme again this year and agreed that the basic structure and principles of the scheme should be retained, so we're recommending that. Also recommending a 2.5% increase in councillors' allowances in line with the staff pay award, the equivalent of £157 on the basic allowance. Also maintaining the dependent carers allowance in line with the Exeter living wage. And then also travel and subsistence continue to apply where appropriate. And a couple of other things I just wanted to pick up, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman, in relation to the report. Firstly, the panel wanted to acknowledge the last 18 months and the pressures that have been on councillors and the council staff. That is picked up in the report. And also, what the panel wants to have a look again next year, considering the amount of moving parts presently, to look at the scheme of allowances to ensure that they remain fit for purpose for next year. And then finally, the panel wish to thank John Street and Sharon Systems for their assistance in compiling the report.
Thank you. Steve, are you all right to take any questions onto the report? Questions, not contributions on it. Is there anybody who wants to ask Steve any questions onto the report? No? Yes, no way.
Just a quick question. I didn't think the pay award for last year had been agreed yet. I thought it was going to the panel. I mean,
we're always a year behind there.
Okay.
Understanding of that. Okay. So, there's no further. Thank you, Steve. I didn't recognise you on Twitter earlier. November's still here until the end of midnight.
That was
November.
That was about 6 years ago.
All right. That's okay. Okay, then, so I'll move it from the chair. Have you accept the recommendations? Seconder?
I second that, Chair.
All those in favour?
I can confirm that it's unanimous vote in favour of the chair and the recommendations have been carried.
Thank you very much. Let me just get my papers right, because I don't want to be another politician not knowing where all my papers are. So we move on to now item number 6 on the agenda, which is the changes to the role of the Chief Executive and Growth Director and Strategic Management Board. There are 6 recommendations. I have no intention to sit here and read them out. But hopefully you've read them. I know one of you have read them. And you can see what we're doing here with the Chief Executive and some of the senior management team. So I'm going to pass over to Kareem Hassan, who are going to talk for the reasons of the recommendations and why are we doing all of this. Kareem Hassan.
Thank you, Leader. So all members will be aware, Council declared a climate emergency and you set a 2030 target to be net zero, and you did it not just on behalf of the City Council, but you done it on behalf of the City as a whole. And since that resolution, you've worked hard with the City's institutions to get buy-in to a vision for the City that sees net zero agenda being absolutely centre stage for everything that we do in the City. The institutions in the City have signed up to that vision, the Exeter 2040 vision, and have been explicit about the 2030 carbon neutral, or net zero rather, agenda. So we've been working with our partners across the City to construct a programme that will allow us to achieve that aspiration. And we published a document under the Exeter City Futures Community Interest Company, the Net Zero 2030 plan. It sets out the range of actions that will be required to deliver on that ambition. And it also has a price tag associated with that ambition. And the price tag is around £1 billion investment required to deliver a City 2030. Now, I'm not aware of any city in the world that's delivered this, right? So I really want to get members to fully understand the magnitude of that ambition, because I get sometimes a little bit privately the sense of are we really addressing the same level of ambition in the full knowledge of what it's going to take for a city to deliver on that ambition. Because there's a whole range of technical, financial, and political considerations that have to be addressed to translate that ambition to reality. Not least, a government whose ambition is 2050, because they believe you can't do it earlier. And they set the policy framework for our City Council in such practical things like planning. We are in a planning system where the volume house builders will be building homes that will need to be retrofitted to get to the zero carbon agenda. They'll be built today compliant with the planning policy framework and then will need to be retrofitted to get to this ambition. And you asked me, in the form of the head of the paid service, to work towards that ambition. And quite rightly, where you started was, what do we do as a City Council? And you've made it quite clear. The Council first has got to get its act together, and so you find it in terms of Dave Bartring's designation, net zero and city management, in order to drive the organisation and making sure that we do what we need to do to comply with the net zero agenda. But if we do everything that we can, we still ain't going to achieve that agenda. And therefore, the task for us is a very significant undertaking in the leadership of the place to bring all our organisations together to hopefully deliver on our agenda. We've been working as a City Council well over a decade on the low carbon agenda. It's the reason why you've got things like the district heating networks, why you've got a commitment to deliver passive house homes in terms of when we build. There's a whole range of issues that we've been focused on, and we've been very disciplined in the way we've been pursuing our agenda. But it needs to be broader, and it needs to be translated in terms of pace. So we've done lots of pilots, but for the city to get to that position, we need to put pace behind it, and we also need to recognise you can't do this as a city. You have to work with the whole region, because a lot of the technical challenges in terms of achieving net zero require carbon offsetting and carbon sequestration with other areas to be able to deal with it. So we will need to work with our neighbours, the rural authorities that are often have the burden, if you like, of the renewable energy agenda in their areas, and we need to work with them in bringing things forward. It's a massive undertaking. And so when the leader asked me what would we need to do as an organisation to help deliver that, it suggested to me that we work with what we have, which is, I think, a fairly rare example of a city with its institutions coming together expressly to address the carbon agenda in the form of Exeter City Futures Community Interest Company. So there's already buy-in from our county council, from the RD&E hospital, from our university, from the college, and from Oxygen Mars, already working on this agenda. So there is a vehicle that allows us to bring some of those key organisations together. And so the proposal is that myself, together with the Director of Transformation, Joe Yellen, that both of us work on this agenda for the next 12 months in order to focus principally on what I would describe as the big ticket carbon issues, which are captured on page 12 of the agenda, paragraph 3.60. These are some of the big ticket items. My view, Leader, would be, first and foremost, what you do is you build a model of the carbon emissions of the city that allow us to then look at these individual initiatives and understand, therefore, what will be the impact on the carbon emissions. And that model will be dynamic, so that when we talk to other organisations about the type of intervention we want to make, we can demonstrate what the level of carbon saving is likely to be. So, but I think we need a focus, because it's such a comprehensive programme of work. Part of the challenges for most organisations is where do you start, because it hits almost everything we do. My idea would be over the next 12 months we focus on these issues. Then we work in a systematic fashion to address those financial, technical, and also political. When I say political, these are the kind of policy issues that the county council and the city council has to face in terms of, for example, setting transport policy, how we deal with parking, electric vehicle charging, all things like that, which are complex issues, but will need to be addressed if we're going to achieve this program. And so the recommendation that we put forward is effectively be seconded in our organisation to effectively reset our organisation, acting as the CEO for our organisation, in order to then re-engage with our key partners to bring what resources we can now into this programme. So it will be a resetting of Exeter Futures with this shared endeavour, and the challenge will be for me to really articulate on behalf of the city that vision, to look at the opportunities to do things together. I mean, we are doing some fantastic things as the City Council. I'll give you an example of the retrofit programme that HRA is doing. It's absolutely brilliant. And we're doing what we can within our own housing stock. The challenge is not 4,000, we've got 40,000 homes. Our challenge is how do we create a mechanism that can engage with the private households who've got houses in the city. How do we do that? But the learning from our own HRA work is absolutely transferable, but we've got to find a way that we can engage to take that forward. So that's the kind of thing that we would be wanting to do. And my ask would be for us to get and have a look at this in terms of coming back to you with what are things that you would at the end of the 12 months say, we think we're achieving the progress that we wanted to make.
Thank you, Kareem. I'll come back here on the end. I don't know if the leaders of the other party want to say anything, make a statement, or yeah, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. In 2019, the UN called for a 7.6% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions every year between 2020 and 2030 to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. We know from the recent COP conference that we have to do even better than that and much quicker than that. And as already has been described, that's a massive job. So I really welcome the proposal, which is almost an aside in this complex report, to establish a carbon budget for Exeter, which will show the baseline positioning for the city, broken down by sector, and the required targets to meet net zero, and the implications for carbon emissions in pursuing proposals set out in the net zero plan. That's absolutely welcome. So this is a big issue and needs clarity, and I found this report very complex and conflated a number of issues. And section 9 provides no real analysis of risk. So I'd like some greater clarity to understand about how the report author arrived at this conclusion. And so I emailed a number of areas that I just would like to focus on. The report includes no criteria for assessing the impact of the secondments. What criteria does the council intend to use? Value for money, carbon reductions, level of investment raised, or something else? I'd like to know what due diligence the council has undertaken of Exeter City Futures, including Exeter City Futures' competency and capacity to deliver, and its financial viability, governance arrangements, or its ability to recruit its own staff. To date, Exeter City Futures has relied on secondments from Exeter City Council and some funds from other members. The 2019 accounts show a loss, including owing funds to Global City Futures. What investment is being made by the other ECF members to fund these secondments? Two key members of the Senior Management Board will be working for another organisation for a year. What will the impact be of secondments on the medium-term financial plan and quality of services for the Council? Conflicts of interest will be inevitable in this complex project. So how does the Council intend to deal with governance and oversight of this work? Exeter City Futures is using a government work to work on an asset-backed investment fund in which Exeter City Council is expected to be a principal shareholder, investing a significant proportion of the 200 million initial investment that the fund requires. Will the seconded officers focus on delivery of this project? And how will the level of the Council's exposure to risk be assessed independently? And finally, should this executive meeting be fully informed of the nature of the Exeter Development Fund and its associated risks it poses to the City Council before proceeding with the secondment? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And Councillor Better? No? Okay, I'll come back in at the end. I'll leave it open to the floor now. Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this report. You won't be surprised to hear. And it really marks a new chapter in the progress, certainly of Exeter City Futures, and also our own journey as a City Council leading on this issue of the moment, the climate emergency, the need we have to make a series of significant changes, both organisationally and personally, if we are actually going to play our part and achieve goals that we have set ourselves by 2030. And I do note that our ambitions are significantly more ambitious than a lot of other organisations and the government in particular, and I'm very proud of that. I welcome the support from Councillor Moore on this. I'm not at all surprised. I know this is an issue that's very dear to her heart. And I know it will get support when it gets to full council. In her speech, Councillor Moore referenced decisions made in 2019. Well, in 2019, Exeter City Council was well on its way in terms of the journey you were already making. Significant numbers of passive house homes had already been built and had been lived in for a number of years, I think potentially a decade. So we've always been in the vanguard of this important work. Councillor Moore raised a number of issues, and I don't blame her raising these issues because you are in support of the direction that we're going in. But I would venture to suggest that these are things that can be and will be dealt with. Risk assessments and conflicts of interest and secondments are all the kinds of things that major organisations are involved in all the time. And yes, clearly, if we're going to ask our Chief Executive to spend 2 days a week working, if you like, alongside other partners, but out with the City Council, there is going to be a knock-on effect, and that has been taken into consideration. We haven't just proposed to move Kareem sideways to, oh, well, you know, somebody will turn up, you know, a few other people do a bit more net, everything will be fine. It is actually backed up with proper research. So I'd like to reassure you on that, and I'm quite certain that if you talk with officer colleagues, they will be able to give you that reassurance. But I think really we need to concentrate on the really positive statement that this makes. This is about leadership. The City Council needs to show leadership, and it is important who is in the room and who is sitting around the table. And I would venture to suggest that there can't be any stronger demonstration of our commitment to this than asking Kareem to actually take on this role, to stand alongside our partners, our major partners, the County Council, the RD&E, the University, Oxygen House, in tackling the problems that this city faces and taking our citizens along with us on this journey. This is true leadership in action. I'm really looking forward to the step changes that are going to happen and the significant progress that I'm confident that we're going to make. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Anybody else want to come in on this one? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo Councillor Sutton's remarks there. We have travelled a tremendous journey as a council way before the declaration of climate and environmental emergencies. It's a journey that has been hard won within this council. We have done substantial installation of solar panels. There are actions around protecting the environmentally crucial valley parks and other green spaces are well recorded. And our work with super energy efficient buildings is, St Sybil's Point is a prime example. We could have built a swimming pool. Yes, we have. We built a building with a number of swimming pools in, but it's not just a building. It is an absolute statement of what can be achieved in trying to deliver this agenda. So absolutely echo what Councillor Sutton has said, and from what Kareem has said, the achievements or the targets embedded in 3.16, 10 things to try and achieve, and I'm sure more will be added to the list, but those 10 things, if achieved, will make a huge difference. This council can deliver itself energy efficient, carbon neutral by 2030, absolutely no problem. We've got to take the city with us, and that means that we need the right people in the right places. I for one feel that Kareem brings the kind of pedigree, the level of skills needed to encourage and bring on board the people that need to be at that table for the city to be carbon neutral by 2030. So I really welcome this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Anybody else? Councillor Wright.
Thank you. I appreciate Councillor Moore's questions. I'm not going to answer them because you're going to answer them. But I would just like to say there's two ways of looking at this. It's just been occurring to me. If we weren't being this transparent and if instead internally it was just said, Corinne's going to spend 2 days a week working on the Net Zero Challenge, the Director of Transformation is going to spend 3 days a week doing that. There wouldn't be perhaps a suspicion around why this is happening, which has come to me through those questions. So I'd just like to just point that out, because I think to spend 2 days out of 5 every week on something which is at the top of our agenda is reasonable and expected, and to be working with a corporation that have already got lots of research at the fingertips, data and contacts at the fingertips makes sense to me. So I'm very much in support of this.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Anything else? Okay, well, I'll sum up this thing now and say, look at the last page of our report. Page 17, number 12. Are there any other options? There are a wide range of options, but the obvious two are business as usual. There is no statutory obligation to lead a citywide net zero agenda, and the council could do what most councils do, and who are doing, by the way, focus on carbon emissions from their own organisation. We could fund on a temporary basis the secondment to lead the programme under ECF. This was tried in the past and made progress, but clearly has not been proven a complete answer. We were continually asked to appoint someone, to have an officer who was going to do a little more than perhaps count up the plastic coffee cups to see what we were doing. I've got to thank Dave Hodgson, the Finance Director, who assisted with us preparing an emergency budget last year, which is brought forward, which we've already reported to Council. We've brought forward the opportunities to allocate funds to be able to start doing work on all of this. So I didn't appoint an officer, a junior officer, and nothing against any other officer. I've asked Kareem to lead it. And I know that he will link up with the other organisations in this city who have all told us that they want to do these things. And our challenge is now is to get out there and to actually, I was going to say hold their feet to the fire, but I don't want additional carbon emissions being spent on this, but to bring them to the fore, to make sure that they stand up to their commitment. And it could well be that they haven't got processes in place. You know, the university has, and we'll be working closely with the university. Green said we are the only city, and some of us who move around in those circles will witness that. We see what others aren't doing. Other local authorities in Devon, in my belief, they have their plans for them, but are then supporting the Devon plan, the Devon County Council plan. That's a safe route. We could do that, couldn't we? There you are. That's it. We've fulfilled our obligations. But we declared an emergency. An emergency. So that tells us it's important. And I'm sorry that it took 2 years to get to this position, a bit late. We did have something occur last year which got in the way a little bit and changed a few things. So I'm not at all going to apologise for what we're about to do in this city. And I'm sorry if you saw the author of the report, you know who the author of the report is. I'm sorry if there's one or two type in errors as to have we got a deputy CEO or an interim deputy CEO. You all know the answer to that. been withdrawn, is the Deputy Chief Executive Officer, and of course it is a matter for Kareem and the organisation to deal with those issues through the HR department, and that is not a matter for us to interfere in. And I respect that Kareem manages his team, and that's what he's doing. So with regard to the impact of the secondments, yeah, it's going to have an impact. It is going to have an impact. Remember, the option is business as usual. We've got a climate emergency. We've got to do something. And Councillor Sutton said it, something may fall off the end. But I've got a good feeling there's plenty of good officers in this council who will catch it before it hits the floor, because that's what we normally do. And I have every faith in them doing that. As for the investment it is being made by other partners, that's exactly what we've got to do. I am sure they are making their own moves, and we will support them in that, and Kareem is working with them. What is the impact on the medium-term financial plan? Well, we're looking at that, and you will have the budget speech, and all that will become clear. Hopefully you will support that. Quality of services. I think the council officers and the staff of this council do exceptionally well when we've lost 60 pence in every pound over the last 10 years. But of course, what they're really driving at, what people want to know, is who are making these decisions. And it's no longer smoke-filled rooms. We can all see ourselves in the rooms now. Well, I'm telling you, and I will say it again, all decisions that impact on the Exeter City Council that comes under our auspices and that we are responsible for will be reported to the Executive Committee. They can be scrutinised. If the Scrutiny Programme Board want to scrutinise it, they can do. They can do. They have every right to. I don't interfere with that process. They will tell us what they want to do, and that's what they can be doing. So I am sure that we will have that back to us. We will deal with the governance and the oversight. And so I'm quite clear. Kareem, page 12. 3.16. That's your JD, mate. That's what I'm going to be judging you on your 360-degree review. That will be Evan from time to time. Where are you on these things? This is what I want to be reported back. That's what we're doing. The 10 things, Kareem.
Can I say that this is a good example? The national government failed at this. They've tried twice to fund private households to take up green measures, and they failed. So whenever I say to you, this is, that item, just understand now the magnitude of what you're asking, because I'm focused on the City Council organisation. We're also saying, you need to do a job for on behalf of the city. I'm saying to you, there's no city in the world that's delivered net zero, and I'll give it my best. But I really need people to understand the magnitude of what the council's been asked to do. It is absolutely massive to find a financial mechanism to fund the way that individual households are going to implement green measures, which we do on behalf of the council, because we've got a financial model that allows us to do it. There's not one that's going to be better for the private housing stock. And in the next 12 months, I'm going to be working my socks off to come up with a mechanism that might work and work with the leaders. And the reason you're asking me to do it is because when I make a phone call, most CEOs in the city will take my call. And I'll be saying to them, we're investing millions in delivering a house, in a retrofit for our housing stock. Are you going to join us on this journey? If you're a registered provider, work with us, because we'll get economies of scale. We'll be able to get the supply side sorted out with our college, train up the workforce to do it. It's a massive economic opportunity, but it is not a light thing at all. If you were to measure me in 12 months what I've achieved, it's going to be, have I made meaningful progress to bring key players to the table to find a way that this city can take this forward? And I think that's a massive undertaking, and your Exeter vision is a vision that makes this city a leading place globally on tackling these problems. And that's what this ambition is saying. You're not just following what the continent, everybody quotes the continent, You could do that. What you've done in this city with the passive arts is that for the first time, you're bringing people from all over the country come and see what you're doing. That's the ambition that I'm signed up to do, and I'm going to do my best. So leave that. Sorry, I get excited about it, because sometimes I know how difficult it is, and I sometimes think people don't grasp how difficult it is, and so whatever I do doesn't hit the mark. And I'm being a failure because I've tried my really damnedest, and we're still struggling. Like you deliver district heating network, you deliver district heating networks, other cities don't know how to do it. We've done it, but you don't take a breath to think, wow, how did we make that? How did we achieve that? You've achieved something remarkable. I don't really want to be apologising when we try our best and we fail, but we try our best.
Thank you, Kareem. And now you can have an insight to the sort of meetings we had early in the morning when we were discussing bringing forward this paper. It is very important, and I think we've got Kareem to be passionate about it all. We will be bringing forward a report about what we're doing with the retrofit, because I think when you see that, you will be amazed and blown away at what we're doing on that. I have asked the question, what is the carbon savings graph, effectively, because obviously we're reducing carbon savings, but a lot of building and everything else, you expend a lot of carbon in the first instance. When is the curve? When is the break-even point? And then when does it start getting better? That is a part of the information that we need to understand. So it is an important one, and also I remind you, and COVID has played its part with regard to SSP, St Stephen's Point. You can see it, it's there, it's happening, it's going to happen. You all will be invited in for a preview at the moment in time, but I don't want anybody getting in the way of them working at the moment. I don't know other reason why, So they are working away, beavering away. You will be blown away. There is no two ways about it. That building is fantastic when you go in and see it. And, that is what we've done, and we will be delivering for the people of Exeter. It will be extolled throughout the country, and as Kareem says, we get involved in stuff and people are asking how we're doing it. So we've spent a bit of time on this. It's an important issue. We declared a climate emergency over 2 years ago. We're now got actions in place to start to do something. I wonder what is going on elsewhere, but I don't spend too much time dwelling on what goes on elsewhere. I worry about what we are doing here in Exeter. So I'm more than happy. I don't believe that I shall be reviewing this regularly, because if I think for one moment that the service is being jeopardised or reduced, I know my portfolio owners will be on to me, quite rightly so, and I've got every confidence in Kareem doing that job and Bindu being the Deputy Chief Executive carrying out those roles. Total confidence. So I'm going to move the recommendations from the Chair. So move. Seconder? Okay, after all that passion and everything else. All those in favour?
That is unanimous vote in favour of the recommendations, Chair, and they have been carried.
Thank you very much indeed. And I'm sorry to our people who've come in to speak today. You might have found that interesting, very important. Thank you. We're now moving on to item 7, which is the Exeter Article 4 Direction, Houses in Multiple Occupancy, response to a recent petition. And before I start, I'm going to ask the portfolio owner in a moment to move recommendations and then ask you to speak to it. But the first thing I want to do is, we have got a change in the recommendations, which Councillor Morse will read in a moment. And I'm sort of saying this before she reads them, because what I want to demonstrate to people is, we've had a number of meetings, local councillors, the Council of Lights has been involved with the local community, brought this forward, done a lot of work, speaking to me, other councillors in the area have spoken to me in relation to it, and I said, right, we need to have a meeting with the petitioners. This was a report of the officers, an understandable report of the officers, but I know to need to look at it in a political way. And I think, hopefully, we've listened to the residents, and I'm not going to take away your moment. You can have your moment in a moment, but hopefully when you hear the recommendations, it'll help you, and I hope you will feel relaxed that we've listened to the local residents, and we're going to try to take it forward as difficult as it is. So first of all, I'm going to ask Councillor Morse to read the 2.1 stays the same, but 2.2 and 2.3 are deleted, and we've got a new 2.2. So if you could read it, you've got it up on the board. There we go. Okay, Emma.
So, it is to note the content of the petition and appreciate the concerns raised regarding the potential impacts of houses and multiple occupancy on the local community, and 2.2. Recognise the continued commitment to preparing the local plan to be agreed to timescales, whilst in parallel identifying additional resources to support a review of the Article 4 direction.
Thank you, Emma. And so before I ask Bindu and her team to explain what we're up to, if I'd like to, I think is it you, John, who's going to come forward? So John, you've got up to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. And please appreciate what I've written was without the knowledge of recommendation.
Appreciate it. Is that okay? So thank you for providing this opportunity to address the committee. I'm here representing around 150 residents of Sylvan Road and surrounding streets in North Pennsylvania, the signatories of 2 letters to the Council and of the petition. In June, our first letter was emailed to Roger Potwillie concerning an HMO development at 42 Sylvan Road and requesting changes to the current Article 4 direction. The petition, submitted on 8th of July, was followed by a revised letter emailed to the Council on the 25th of July. It's vital that the petition is considered together with the letters that were intended to provide substance to the petition itself. Since then, and following further excellent discussions with Councillors Ian Light and Laura Wright and the Council Leader, we've been contacted by a growing number of very concerned local residents and have gathered further evidence to support our request for a review of the Article 4 direction and all matters regarding the conversion of family homes into HMOs for use as student accommodation. We're about to submit a third letter containing this evidence. Our investigations have uncovered the deep and widespread concern of local residents about these matters. There's a growing disquiet about the way in which communities in North Pennsylvania are being detrimentally affected by the creeping conversion of family homes into HMOs. We have anecdotal evidence that some of these HMOs do not appear on the council register. In 2016, there was 1 HMO in North Pennsylvania. Now there are at least 14. Local residents report many incidents in which landlords and their tenants, some of whom have no commitment or care for the community, make life miserable for their neighbours. The amenity value of the whole area is being detrimentally affected by the excessive noise, litter, antisocial behaviour, and an increasing number of cars resulting from the gradual increase in student houses, whose impact ripples out to affect the whole community. These HMOs also reduce the number of houses available to families and other owner-occupiers, particularly excluding young families from moving into the area. Once houses in the road start to convert, others quickly follow. We want to make clear that we have nothing against students per se. Many of us were once students ourselves, and we recognise that the vast majority are socially minded. However, a small minority are not. And it's this minority living in HMOs in the area who have a profoundly negative impact on the amenity of our community. Many residents feel unhappy and dissatisfied at what they feel is the indifference of the City Council and university authorities to their plight. They request that the Council take their concerns seriously and engage in dialogue and consultation that will lead to action to address these concerns. Given the relentless nature of the steady increase in student housing Local residents are unwilling to wait until 2024 for a new local plan to come into effect in the hope that this will address their concerns. We're requesting immediate dialogue, serious consultation and effective action. Unfortunately, the report table for this meeting prior to these changes, I have to say, while it mentions the petition, does not begin to engage with the issues raised in our letters. We consider it to be an inadequate response to what are serious, widespread and growing concerns. We're requesting that the Council take two actions. One, to immediately engage in a formal consultation process, which is great, with a view to further halting further conversions of family homes into HMOs for student accommodation in North Pennsylvania. And two, to review all planning related to HMO and student accommodation in the city, including providing effective buffer zone around any Article 4 areas, a provision that's stated but only partially implemented in the current local plan. These are serious issues and we hope the Council will give them the consideration they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And I hope we've demonstrated that we are not indifferent to it and we are taking it seriously now. I understood how that was written. So, Bindu, would you like to talk to the paper, or is it George? Bindu.
Thank you, Chair. There was never any doubt in officers' mind about the strength of feeling about this issue. Obviously, we received a petition that had 48 signatures, which subsequently grew to 98, and as we've heard repeated this evening, we've also received further correspondence about this issue. You'll see in the report, Chair, that on an initial look, officers couldn't find sufficient evidence to require a review of the Article 4 provisions for that area in question. I say high level, Chair, not because officers aren't thorough in their approach, but it's simply a matter of resources. So Council has previously prioritised for the service, as has the portfolio holder yourself, the development of Exeter's local plan along a very specific timescale, and that's what we've been working to. The proposed amendments tonight, Chair, obviously speak to the issue of resources, and so officers are in that context, should obviously the amendments be agreed this evening, to go away and identify the additional resources that we feel would be required in order to bring those amendments, should they be agreed, to bring forward a review of the areas in question, Chair. I hope that's helpful. There's a lot of information obviously in the report. I don't intend to go over it, but we're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll come in. There is no way that we try to disrespect your report. You've done what you were told to within the resources available, and you know, this is sometimes the advantage of being a politician. There's not a lot of advantages, but sometimes the advantage of being a politician that we can say this is what we're doing. But with that position comes a number of consequences. i.e. we've got to find the money for it. But I'm prepared that we are going to do that. So it's an important issue. So, have you got any of the leaders want to say anything? I generally come to these first. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Leader. Obviously, we've only seen recommendation 2.2 tonight, which I do welcome, but hopefully that will be taken forward in the spirit that it's been intended, which is good. But can I, just for a bit of clarity, and hopefully either yourself, Bindu, or the portfolio holder can help, in terms of 2.2, are we only talking about this current petition and the area of that's concerned, or other areas adjacent to the Article 4 direction area? Because obviously there are areas within my ward that are in a very similar situation to the petitioners, which aren't currently part of the Article 4 direction. So I'm just wanting assurance that maybe they will be looked at the same time, looking at the process. That's all for now.
This helps, I'm quite clear on what it says, Councillor Mitchell. Additional resources to support a review of the Article 4 direction. That's what we're going to do. and that's what we do. And it is serious, and hopefully that will, the two things that were mentioned by, I think we've demonstrated that we're going to do. So, I'll come to Emma at the end. Is there anybody else want to say anything? Councillor Wood.
Thank you. I'll be brief. It's not my portfolio area, and my board isn't as impacted as other areas of the city with student accommodation. I've spent a few conversations with Councillor Leon Lights on the subject, and well aware of the passion in the local community. And you can see it's a very complex issue. It's a fine balance. And obviously, although not necessarily very welcomed by some, the purpose-built student accommodation that we have within the city is influencing this agenda. It's helping. It's a fine balance to be struck, and I think that it will take careful consideration and analysis by officers to come up with a balanced response to it. But I'm in no doubt as to the strength of community feelings about it, and I really do sympathise, as do the other councillors I've spoken to. So thank you for bringing the petition, and I'm pleased to see the council's response to it.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Mrs. Standard for coming this evening, and I think the comments in the speech of Mr. Dunn are extremely helpful. I live quite near to where you live, in fact in a neighbouring ward in Durham and St James, but with many students living in my street, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I think it is extremely challenging, though, in that the university continues to expand. I think it's due for another 900 or so next year. So those students have to go somewhere, and as my colleague Councillor said, that there are a lot of complaints from people in those wards about they don't like PBSAs either. But the council has to do something. So the reason I'm making this comment is that, yes, I completely understand and support what you're saying, but I would also ask residents to also recognise that we can't do nothing if we're going to try and maintain those family homes, which that is one of our priorities, so we don't lose any more and we actually keep those full families. Then we have to find somewhere to put students. So PBSAs are, the knock-on effect of that, unless the government reimposes caps on university. And that cap used to be there, but the coalition government took it off. And we have had to respond to that. And the university does bring a lot of money into the city, but there is a downside. So I think there is a balance to be achieved. And I think that's exactly what we're doing. We're working towards it. Council Lights is certainly on the board, and as you know, Councillor Wright is as well. And you've got me in the background, so I'm living right in the middle of it. So I do keep our executive informed of what the issues are. You may, I don't know if you walk down Victoria Street, but you may have noticed it's now quite clean and tidy. Well, I've been on to that. I've been counting bins once a week, and now we've actually got that problem sorted. So we are on the case, and just trust us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you to the residents for the way that they have conducted this petition and letter writing and asking Councillor Leon Lights to meet with them, which she did very, very well. Councillor Lights is one of the Labour councillors for the Pennsylvania area. I'm just pleased because this does show that even in something that's quite complex as this is and has an awful lot of nuances, that we're not indifferent. We're really not. Sometimes it takes a while to be able to get meetings, to be able to listen, to be able to hear, to discuss, think it over, and then to look and think, well, can we do this? What are the implications of it? But I just wanted to say that I'm really pleased that I hope we've demonstrated that, and it is teamwork, neighbourhood work, with yourselves and your local councillor and the leader and now executive. So I'm really pleased to see this and going to support it, Chair.
Okay, there's no further contributions. I'm going to ask Councillor Morse, the portfolio owner, please. Councillor Morse.
Thank you. First of all, I'd really like to thank the officers who have been working on this and have produced a document based on one goalpost, and then we moved the goalpost, and now they probably feel a little hard done by. But thank you very much for doing that. Thank you for finding budget wherever you have, so that the local plan can continue at the speed it's currently working at. I think it's really important that we see this review and the local plan in tandem, that they shouldn't be seen outside each other. So some of the things that you're requesting probably fit better into local plan rather than into Article 4. So do understand it might not always be obvious, but your comments, and you must always remember, if we go out to consultation, please comment on the local plan, because that's the evidence we need to make the decisions that move forward. So do remember that. You know, we've heard you here, but do keep making your point, because it's really valuable at all those stages. I think we have to remember that a review of an Article 4 area across the city is a large ask, and I will probably be asking that there are degrees of information so that we are fully informed before we make any decision on the scale and how far it may go, because we do need to be realistic that we can't look at an entire city for this, but we'll have a good look, and I will we'll be back at some point to discuss those options with the executive.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. So those are the two recommendations. I'm going to move it from the chair. Can I have a second, please?
Seconded, Chair.
All those in favour of the two new recommendations?
That is unanimous vote in favour of the Chair of the recommendation that we carried as amended.
And thank you to the petitioners for coming along. Okay?
This meeting, local residents will be very, very grateful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we're now moving on to item 9, which is the 21-20... Item 8, is it? So, wishing my time away. We've already gone past 7 minutes, it's past 6. Item 8 is the overview of the General Fund Review Budget 21-22, second quarter, and there are 4 recommendations here, and I'm going to ask Dave Hodgson.
Thank you, Chair. As I said, this is the report of the General Fund Revenue Budget at the halfway stage of the year. Just want to draw members' attention to the fact that the planned take from General Fund working balance is expected to be quite substantially lower, £550,000 less than we anticipated. But I think it's really important for members to be aware that that kind of masks a projection of an income loss of 2.4 million against budget. So we're still expecting substantially lower on car park income, a small loss in the corn exchange, and a loss in the projected income from renting out the civic centre. So things that you would naturally expect have been impacted and slowly recovering after the pandemic, and you know, I think it's fair to say that we may see, you know, further challenges over the next few months. That's somewhat masked by significant underspends, and those underspends in the main are things that, because of resources, are not being delivered. So the likelihood is that you will get a significant request for supplementary budgets at the end of the year to have those budgets put forward into next year so that they can be delivered. They're still important items, we just haven't got the staff to do it. Contractors are difficult to get hold of at the moment, so we're almost in the perfect storm. So whilst we're showing a position where we're taking less from the general fund balance, and that's likely to be the case, at the year end it's important to note that there's likely to be a take from the earmark reserve that we absolutely set aside to protect ourselves against income losses because we foresaw this happening. There will be a take to match the amount of supplementary budgets that are needed. So I think that's just important. The other key issue, because it requires council approval, is the supplementary budgets, section 8.11. A list of supplementary budgets. The vast majority are funded from grants. So we've received grants from the government, and this is you just enabling the council to spend that money. One reduction in the budget for community grants from neighbourhood sale, and one tiny £5,000 request for an additional budget, which will be funded from the general fund. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dave. Have you got any contributions, any questions? No, I haven't. Again, thank you, David, for what you're doing. It's appreciated. There's some recommendations there. 4 recommendations. I'm going to move them from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, second, Chair.
All those in favour?
That's unanimous vote in favour of the recommendations, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you, Mark. Now we get on to item 9. And this is the 21-22 General Fund Capital Monitoring Statement for Quarter 2. There's two recommendations here. David Ogson again, please.
Thank you, Chair. This will be even more brief. So, this is the report at the halfway stage on the capital programme for General Fund. As members are aware, massive capital programme, the biggest in our history, £107 million. At the moment, we've spent £9.7 million. Just as in quarter 1 budget monitoring, exactly the same issue. There's challenges in the supply chain, which are well documented, have made national news. We're not immune from that. What we're seeing is difficulty in getting suppliers, in getting products, assets. I think a couple of weeks ago we put in an order for a vehicle that we use in cemeteries, and we've been given a 2-year lead time for that. So that's kind of an indication of what's happening. So it will be no surprise to you that a lot of the capital programme will be deferred, not because we're not trying to spend it, but because we just can't get the parts, or we can't get contractors to deliver. And we're seeing when we do tender, some fairly eye-watering prices being charged. So generally quite challenging in the capital programme, but other than that, there's nothing particularly to report, other than having just said that you've got an eye-wateringly high capital programme. We are seeking to add another 6 million to it, which I'm pleased to say is funded from central government.
Okay, have you got any comments, any questions? Just to say that second recommendation, which recognises the £6.4 million for the brownfield sites, very important to us if we are to develop brownfield sites and save the green spaces around. What's going to do to the vote there, Duncan? Are you going to help me now if I bring you in? Duncan.
Thank you. Just 2 things really. Counteracting my coffee, I found out that there's a national shortage on sugar. So I'm pretty sure there's a shortage on a lot of things. So I feel for that. The other thing I wanted to point out is 8.5, solar panels going onto Riverside. So it's just yet another example of this council delivering against the Zero 2030.
Well, thank you for pointing that. At least the roof will be able to stand the load bearing of those panels at the moment. So those are the recommendations. All those in favour of the 2 recommendations, please show. Thank you.
That is unanimous vote, Chair. The recommendation has been carried.
Thank you. And now move on to item 10, and this is the HRA Budget Monitoring Report of Quarter 2. And there are 2 recommendations here. David, can you tell us about the HRA Monitoring Report for Quarter 2, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is the 6 monthly report into the House and Revenue accounts. Nothing significant to draw members' attention to. It's absolutely ticking along. Only thing to note is that the issues I've just highlighted for the General Fund Capital Programme are exactly the same for the HRA Capital Programme, who are equally seeing some eye-watering figures come through when they do the tender. And the challenge, you literally have to make decisions really quickly or you will lose that contractor. That's absolutely what the market's like at the moment. So, happy to take any questions again.
Okay, any questions or contributions for anything? And David warned us there about taking back control, and there we go. So, there's a couple of recommendations. Frankie, you can't speak at these unless you register to speak, so that's what I will say. I'm not ignoring you, that's the process, okay? So, all those in favour of those recommendations, please show.
As unanimous vote in favour, Chair. The recommendations have been carried.
Agenda 11, Treasury Management 21-22, half-year update. And there's one recommendation here. David.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to know this is the last time you'll hear from me tonight. So this is the 6-monthly update on the Treasury Management Strategy. Statutory report, we have to report every 6 months. Nothing significant to say. Interest rates very low. I think the announcements this weekend have probably muddied further the decision for the Bank of England in December. It was looking likely that they may raise interest rates for the first time in many years in December. I think that's a slightly muddier picture now. In terms of the report, it sets out our performance. There's nothing significant to draw your attention to. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. David, any questions? No? Okay, so I'll move that recommendation from the Chair. Seconder?
Seconded.
All those in favour?
I can confirm that as unanimous vote in favour, Chair.
Item 12, updates to procurement and contract procedures. Yeah, so there are three recommendations here with a couple of bullet points. If you would like to speak to the Chanel to some of the recommendations, please.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this report basically just outlines changes required in light of the EU exit earlier this year, sorry. So all references to the official journal of the European Union have been changed to the government procurement agreement to reflect the change in the UK status. References to state aid have been updated to the 2021 Subsidy Control Bill. The regulations now include provision for reserving below threshold contracts to suppliers by location and for SMEs and PCSE organisations. The exemption form now captures all contracts which are directly awarded by the Council, be that compliantly or in line with regulations, or if they aren't in line with regulations. So we've got a track of all direct awards. And there are some administrative changes included there as well, including updates to web links to legislation, where job titles and officer roles have changed, and an express requirement for all contracts to be signed before they actually commence.
Okay, thank you for that. Have you got any questions or contributions from the floor? No? Okay. I'm going to move those recommendations from the Chair. Seconder, please.
Seconded, Chair.
All those in favour?
That is unanimous vote in favour, Chair. The recommendations have been carried.
Thank you, Mark. That's the end of the meeting, everybody. Well done. and I'll see you at the annual meeting. Thank you very much. Well, not the annual meeting, at the next meeting in December.